Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's 2:30. It's in Santa Barbara. We're having another 805 conversation. We've got a guest with us today, Patrick Melroy. Patrick, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having
Great.
me, Mark.
Yeah. And thanks to everybody who has joined us. And let's get started because one of the things, Patrick, is we were just talking about timeliness. I like to go kind of quick through these. So I just want to let people know how this works. If you've got questions, go ahead and put them in the question panel over on the GoToMeeting control panel. And I'm doing double duty as host and question answerer. If you have technical questions, you can put them in there. I'll do my best to answer them. You can follow us at 805 Connect if you want to. If you are not in 805 Connect and you heard about this webinar from maybe Patrick's post or social media, if you follow us, then you'll hear about other webinars that we're doing. We're doing once a month, typically the last Wednesday of the month. And if you're not a member, go ahead and join us. So we do want to thank our sponsors. Citrix is the sponsor of our webinar series. They've been fantastic hosts for us, and the 805 Connect project is sponsored by these fine people. And Patrick, you'll notice pull string there prominently with all of the media
Oh,
sponsors. There you
nice. Excellent.
go. Yep, you're right there, right in the middle, so everybody can see it. And we also have Adiz, which is that red A in the center. They just came on last week. Did a nice story on them, a great management consulting company. So we're thrilled to have them. So let's get into it. The golden age of podcasting. I met Patrick, it seems like a couple of months ago now, but not pretty recently. We follow Kimmy D, local comedian, and she did a podcast with you, a relatively new podcast. Then I said, "Whoa, there's a podcaster in town." I've been doing this for I don't know since they first started coming out, and I wore that little iPod around, that little lanyard iPod, and I would listen to podcasts, and so Patrick and I struck up a conversation and said we ought to do something here with 805 Connect and with our 805 conversations. And Patrick says, yeah, let's do that. Let's bring podcasting to small businesses and give a voice to them. And Patrick, one of my favorite questions asked is, tell us something that people don't know about you. And what you told me was that you were a magician, which I love when you were a kid, and
Yeah,
that
when I was a kid.
so we have some connection there. And then that your mom was the Betty Crocker Homemaker of the Year in 1964. So does that make you Leave It to Beaver? Is that
Yeah,
could
pretty
be,
much.
right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And then also that in your hometown, the mascot, which I didn't even know a hometown could have a mascot, is a scudder. So one
Sputter.
a sputter. Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
So I was thinking potato chips, and you're thinking, there you go, sputter. Perfect. So Patrick, welcome. We're glad to have you here, and let's get started. When we talk about podcasting, and I'm going to assume people have some sense of what it is. If they don't have any sense, why don't you kind of tell us, why now? We've been doing it for 8 years, and why is it an overnight success?
Well, I mean, the obvious answer that everybody just, answered in their head when you said that is Serial. Serial came out
Uh,
and continued the long-standing traditions of This American Life and NPR, and that kind of very comfortable, very well metered voice in your head of listening to, This American Life tell you a story that either seemed very familiar to you or seemed like something that you could connect to and build a relationship with. But it's been going, like you said, for several years now, over 8. In the mainstream, I would say it's been up and functioning for even longer than that. But the real success of the thing picked up speed with shows like Mark Maron, his WTF show, The Nerdist, and before that, Adam Carolla built out a whole network. And Adam transitioned from live radio into the podcast realm, and that's really he brought with him an entire clutch of people that were looking for the experience of listening to a show in
right,
their headphones,
right.
but that they could take it anywhere, and that it was more. This fits back into the DVR concept of having destination or appointment listening, where you can listen at your leisure, and you can pause it and start it, but in the long form, so you get much more time in it. So why now? Because the technology has finally allowed us through the apps, the App Store has given us all sorts of opportunities to get lots and lots of access to all sorts of different authors, all sorts of different content in ways that we never really had access before. And it's certainly picked up a strong momentum. Did I get it?
Yeah, I think that's it. And so, what was it that got you to, you pull string has been, you're a fine artist, so
Mhm.
we'll disclose you you teach. You've been
Mhm.
teaching for years, and I think you've got a couple of books on your site. You're publishing some was it nonfiction or fiction work right now? You did a call for participation.
Right, we're doing my partner Raymond Douglas and I started Pullstring Press a couple years ago with the intent of becoming content providers on multiple platforms, and one of them has been publishing small runs of books, and we've had
Right.
some very successful fun runs with those. But the podcast grew out of that because as artists, there's this moment where you really codify your ideas by saying them out loud, and so we were having these
Huh.
conversations around the table, and never more do you know exactly how you feel about something until you have to say it out loud, like right now and right here. And I
Right.
think that's the draw to being a content creator like this, is that it really causes you to decide, how do I feel about something?
Hmm.
And now it's recorded, and it's in the record, and it's going to be out there forevermore, and so now you have to deal with that or reconcile that, because you've
Right.
just said it. And that happened for me when I was teaching, and I'm standing in front of a classroom full of 35, 65, sometimes 300 young minds at the university, and a question's posed to me about contemporary art, and I have to stand there and defend my beliefs or defend my position while simultaneously bringing them along with me. Well, that allowed me to really develop how I feel about something. It's
Sure.
not just about
Sure.
developing the language, but it's about, finding a place in your own mind for how you feel about something. So the podcast was just a perfect extension of that opportunity to sit down with my friends, my peers, my collaborators, and the people around me. You've been on the show, and say, hey, what's your story, and what do you think about
Right.
this? And in doing that, we make this incredible record.
Someone, I used to quote them. They said, "I don't know what I think. I haven't said it yet."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that fits it perfectly.
So the why now for us is that you're easy to work with, and I really like your point of view because you bring an artistic sensibility to this business conversation that we want to have. Because I don't want to do really dry stuff. I want it to be fun,
Good.
and I think that's going to happen. So the why now, it's going to be easy. We're going to be able to do something really interesting. So why don't we talk about why it works? Why is podcasting as a medium so successful, and why do you think it's going to work having these business conversations? I mean, any kind, but why do you think it
Yeah.
works?
Well, the first part of that is that it works because it's guilt-free content acquisition. You don't have to feel bad because you're almost always doing something else. You're
Right,
exercising, you're walking, you're doing your laundry, you're doing these other you're driving, you're in your commute. There's no way to speed those tasks up. There's just no way to really like shorten your commute or change your commute other than to start bringing content into it. But this allows you to guilt-free, acquire either history or lessons or stories, or just not be alone in that moment, that you're doing this thing that you want to have to be doing to maintain your life. But now you have a podcast to drop into your ears, and it's such it's such a great way to get that 45, 50 minutes down the road is by sitting and listening, or acquiring that information as it comes into your head. So why it works, it's this absolutely simple, intimate thing that comes into you without you really having to do anything. But simultaneously, like I said before, you can pause it, you can deal with what's in front of you, order your coffee, eat your coffee, and then go back on your walk.
so talk to me about this. You said this a couple of times. We talked about it. You don't feel alone. What do you
Yeah.
mean by that?
Well, I mean, I don't mean it to sound like that all of us can't reconcile those moments of isolation, but it's I find that it's there are certain people in my life, like Malcolm Gladwell, like NPR's Ira Glass that I really, or even Alec Baldwin I've been enjoying lately because
Me too. Me too.
he's got a voice from my childhood. So there's this kind of great feeling of walking along and feeling like there's a connectivity that I have now in a way that you don't get any other platform. If Alec Baldwin, for one, shows up on a talk show, then we get a few minutes with him. But here you get this kind of like very extensive, almost phone conversation where you're just listening in. You're listening in on the opportunity. When it comes to the small business side of things, I think I kind of walked away from that a little bit. But there's a very authentic feeling to when we push up on the air somebody who is talking about what they do as a day job or what they do for a living or a business that they've built. I'm thinking of people like Meg Smith in town, who's a
That
small
was a great
entrepreneur.
podcast.
Great interview, really, really committed person who's, living out literally the American dream, literally the thing we talk about all the time of like pulling yourself up by the bootstraps. This kid is literally doing it. And having an opportunity for him to express, in extended amounts of time, his choices and how he created his business and his ideas. Also, we brought Julia Mayer, who created the very successful French press coffee company, and we
Also
got to
excellent.
yeah, and we got to listen to these details that you would never get access to otherwise. And so when you're talking about building a relationship with a business, I have lots of relationships here in town with small businesses. But getting to hear the owner and the owner's experience and the way that they traveled from start to present is fascinating to me. And I think that it builds out their brand in a really strong way, that it gives them an authentic touchback to us, the people who are most interested in knowing about them.
That's so dead on that, I think that's the other aha moment I had after listening to Julia's, which actually was a two-parter. You can
Yeah,
go
it's what
find
she
that on.
talks
It
about.
was,
Yeah.
it was, it was. You don't want it to stop.
Yeah.
But the next time I went into French press, which is like the 805 Clubhouse, uh,
Yeah.
I felt like I totally knew her. I'd known her for a long time. And I'd seen her. I knew she was the owner, but I didn't feel like I knew her. But in listening, I was like, oh, it gave me deep insight. And again, you asked questions that weren't just the normal about the business, which is what
Right.
inspired me to do what it is that we're doing, which is
Yeah.
to really understand the people behind the business. That's something with 805 Connect. People say, well, do I just list my business? And I said, well, yeah, but I'm more interested in you. And I think people will be more interested in you and the people behind the business, which is why we ask the kinds of questions that we have in there in our profile, which are just different. So it works. I think the other piece you said was it's like you said it's really personal because that's person's
Yeah.
in my head, and there's a trust factor that develops, especially after you listen to them for a while and you get to know the hosts as well.
Yeah. Yeah. There's every podcast has its own flavor and its own experience. And I think that I really when I switch back and forth between podcasts or when I start a new one and start listening to a new one, there's always that acquisition moment where you're trying to figure out who is this that's
Right,
talking here.
right.
But that's the real beauty of it is that if there's thousands of podcasts currently, but they're very, local also. There's the availability of getting into talking, like ours is oh, we just clicked into it. Nice. Santa Barbara is such a specific and interesting place, but very often a lot of the media that hits us and that comes out of here is very homogenized, and it doesn't feel like it's specifically feels like we're here and or that it's coming from here. And I think that that's we're a really wonderful, interesting small town that can't just be nailed down into the box that is beachside town that looks like Spanish architecture from the 20s. We're a much more interesting, vibrant community than that. And so we're hoping to expand that and expand that conversation and express that conversation.
That's what's interesting. I've been in Santa Barbara since 1972, and with this project for the last, almost we're going into our second year, I have to think beyond the three mountains and Pacific Ocean on one side and look north up to San Luis. I've been up to San Luis many, many, many times and meeting amazing people up there and getting to know the folks at Cal Poly and the Hot House and the various small businesses and large businesses. And then all the way down to Ventura and understanding the nuances between Ventura and Conejo Valley and Westlake and Camarillo. And there are just such amazing people who have chosen to live here in this
Right.
region and put quality of life above everything else because it's cheaper elsewhere. You can maybe make more money elsewhere. It's easier to hire people. It's all of those things are easier, but you don't get 72 degrees, 300 days out of the year, and you don't get that small, or 21 small towns, right, in this region that are loosely knit by the 101 freeway. And that has been an interesting awareness for me. And so I've been trying to find a way, and we do it with the webinars. It's just not enough to have conversations, right? The kind of conversations I get to have they're spectacular with these small businesses that I meet all the time and what they're trying to do. And every single one now that we've got the podcast, it's okay, can I get you on a Friday
Right.
morning? We want to get you down and talk about your project because there are global businesses that are small, that are run out of small shops here somewhere in the 805 that we definitely want to give a global voice to, and this is going to be another way because they wouldn't think of doing this on their own, right? So this is something that we can bring to them.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's like most things inside of the business world is that you're a really good, landscape architect, and that means that probably you need to spend a lot of time in business working on that business. What we provide is just an auxiliary, an extra thing. We spent the time figuring out how to make podcasts really good, and everybody starts talking from the beginning like, oh, well, I can watch a YouTube video and get it up and going. And that's how I felt about designing, online web pages back in the day. But it really turns out that you have to really know what you're doing and get that experience from somebody who's done it before. And so we really, we spend a lot of time focusing on, making it better every week and increasing the quality of what we do every week so that the landscape architect doesn't have to.
Exactly. So let's talk about this new show, 805 Conversation.
Yeah.
It's been fun looking for music and getting graphics and booking guests and
Yeah.
talking to people about what we want to do. And you and I have talked about we do improv on Wednesday nights, and one of the things we learn in improv is to prepare, not and don't plan.
Yeah.
So we have a rough idea of what we want to do here. We want to add value, right? That's important. I want you to spend that 45 minutes, whether you're doing the laundry or in my case, cooking in the kitchen. I want it to be where you're like, God, that was really good. What's the next one going to
Right.
be like? And so we'll do a great job of getting. There's no lack of interesting stories in the region. That is for sure. And there's a lot of people who have supported this project that we want to talk to, who really they care about the vitality of the region because at the end of the day, 805 Connect is about what do we do together to be this catalyst for conversation about things that matter to us in the region, and how do we make a difference for the people who aren't necessarily going to go join some kind of economic development forum or go to those kind of things. What can they do? Here's an example: is in the interview you had with Julia, the owner of the French press, with her husband Todd. They felt that they didn't have a ring of resources to go to talk about what do we do with HR? What do we do about
Right.
this? There's so many things. We track actually 135 different skills that a business person needs to have some capability with. And they're like really good at making coffee or really good at managing people. And there's
Right.
132 other things that you need to do. And they formed their own group of people. And I met the owner of Say Cheese the other day, and
Right.
I said, I only know you because you are part of this cabal that Julia has with other people. And I'm really curious how many other people have set those kinds of networks up, those informal networks with other small businesses. And the more I ask that question, the more I hear from people. And so our show, we hope, will be a this catalyst for conversation. And what's great is it's business, but as we were talking earlier, you said the Johnny Carson show was entertainment. But
Yeah.
everybody, tell me about that again. How did you tie Johnny Carson to business?
Well, so this is something we that they do so well, right? Johnny Carson, The Tonight Show, and now the heirs to that, Jimmy Fallon. You're watching an hour-long commercial. I mean, the
Mm,
idea is that I mean, and that's always been the case, sponsored by GE or whoever else, and it's not a bad thing. I think it's a really digestible way to receive the information that's coming. But every single guest that comes on the show, The Tonight Show, is presenting information about a product, whether that's a movie or an album that's coming out or a comedy show, and which is fine. Again, it's I'm willing to trade that time to be entertained by it, but that's what's happening. That this is a business opportunity where you can impact the market, get your message
uh,
out, communicate your values or the authenticity of your brand. Or the reasons that people should participate in the product or the project that you're doing. And that's the idea behind, extending the podcast out to businesses, and especially this 805 Conversations, is this idea of saying we are a platform that can make your message one that is very digestible and makes sense and is easily attained. You don't have to do a lot of work to figure it out or research to
right.
to dig through and figure out, well, what, when you want to see this movie and you're not sure if this movie is any good, one of the ways to do it is to watch, late night and see if the person is remotely compelling for 4 minutes while talking to Jimmy Fallon. And if you find them distasteful or uninteresting or not good at what they're doing, then they're probably not a very good representative for their brand, and you don't go see the movie. Um, that's a dark thought. but that's our intention is to present a wonderful platform where people
Right.
can extend out and expand their brand and expand their conversation so that people can get to know them in a very fast, enjoyable manner, rather than having to dig through a bunch of statistics and research.
So it'll be up to us to ask those
Yes.
interesting questions, which I've told people the last 13 years with intro networks, I'm really in the question business
Yeah.
because we ask questions through a profile. I can't be there in person to ask the questions, yet I want to get this really deep understanding about someone before I'm going to work with them or bring them onto a team or do business with them. So how you, I probably have 30 books that are just books of questions, which
Oh,
are
yeah.
really interesting. And so I'm always kind of on the lookout for that. So speaking of questions, why don't
Yeah.
we open it up
Please.
to our attendees? So attendees, you can go into the question area there and you can type in a question and then I'll read those out loud. I want to start with one though. I would like to ask the people on the call to type in their favorite podcast. I'm just curious what we'll see. We've mentioned 4 or 5 during our call here. I'm just curious. And hopefully, when we ask this in a year, someone will say they can't miss that 805 conversation. So there we go. So Tim Ferriss, yeah, Patrick, I was listening to Tim last night, and in fact, here's the power of the podcast. When you trust that person, they talk about a product. We go and buy the product. You've heard of the bulletproof coffee
Yep.
before, so now he's got bulletproof tea,
Oh,
and
he's got a product on it. That's interesting. Yeah.
no, it's not a product. He was just saying, hey, I just wanted to show you I make this tea. It's this green tea, black tea, coconut
Yeah.
oil.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, that looks pretty good. I trust him. And the last batch of that tea arrived today. So
Oh,
we'll
good.
get to try that. And then
Yeah.
Eric says, barbell shrugged, fitness related. Huh? Not heard of that. So other questions that we've got. Now, I wanted to let people know that I I've got a long list of people that I'm trying to get, but if you can think of someone that you would like us to approach to try to get on the 805 conversation. Just send mail to Mark at 805 connect. And then, okay, here we go. Greg's, what are the do's and what are the don'ts of podcasting? What are best practices? Now, this comes from Greg Van Ness, who's the CEO of Tolman and Weicker, what is it, 100 years, I think they've been, or something like that in the region. And Greg's going to be one of our first guests. So he's
Oh,
trying to
great.
get some tips right now. So what are the do's and don'ts?
Well, there's one big do and one big don't. Here's one big do. Find yourself a really good critic who's going to listen to every single show and give you feedback as quickly as possible
Oh, great.
week to week. And that's my brother. My brother listens to every show and gives me intense feedback, unfiltered, absolutely straightforward. And it's the most valuable thing you can have is to have somebody who listens completely critically, totally critically, with every intention of giving you a judgment. I love him for that because nobody else is really willing to holler at the emperor if he's got no clothes on. And the don't, the really big don't, the biggest don't there ever was in podcasts is don't eat on the mic, because there is no chewing sound that anybody ever wants to hear. It never makes the story better. So don't eat on the mics, and that's a strange. It seems like such an obvious thing, but everybody shows up and they've got a snack and they think they're gonna. And it's we did when we had you in. You brought in those
I brought a
waffles,
snack, yeah.
and they were beautiful and they were wonderful, but well, it slowed me down because I have to step off the mic to eat it, you know. So get yourself a really good critic who loves you and who's willing to be honest, and don't eat on the mic.
So Eric wants to know, he says, I'm starting a podcast and just can't seem to nail down a name for it. Any suggestions for naming your podcast?
Yeah, this happens to everybody. We did it wrong. We named our podcast Town, and my idea was it was based on the old art web, the SEO idea of be the only thing on Google that's named that. Well, it turns out when it comes to podcasts, it's a terrible idea. What you want in a podcast is you want a combination of your topic and subject matter that'll draw people in, and then mixed with a little bit of kind of your character, who you are. So the one that I've seen do really well are things like Philosophy Jerks. It's a perfect name. It's drawing in people who want to learn about philosophy. When somebody goes to the iTunes store and types in, a topic like philosophy, when they go down the list of all the different philosophy shows that pop up, the one that says Philosophy Jerks is,
Sounds fun. I'd listen to
you
that.
give it a shot. I'd
Yeah.
listen to that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would.
So when you're picking a name, go with your topic, nail down your topic, and then throw into it. Here's another one I love, Probably Science. It's a really great show with Matt Kershaw on it and some other comedians out of LA. Probably Science, it sticks, it's something you can recommend to a friend, and it seems you instantly listen to it and say, yeah, that sounds like it's going to be a good time. They almost never talk about science.
Greg wants to know, how does one distribute or post a podcast? That you made that easy. You answered that for me. It's so easy, right?
It's so easy once you get it set up. Yeah, once you get it set up, then it really goes quickly. You're going to look for a podcast provider. We use a couple. We use SoundCloud and we use Libsyn. Libsyn is Liberated Syndication. It's one of the biggest podcast providers out there, but really any of the ones that are in that know what they're doing, they'll help you and walk you through an RSS feed, which is something you need in order to go to the iTunes store. iTunes takes about 5 days to get up on the store, but once you get up, and it takes 15, 20 minutes for you to upload a new show every time. But it really just comes to you want to post it everywhere you can find to post it, and having you're going to pay $15 a month, $15 to $20 a month to host it, just like anything else. That's the cost of doing business. But we recently just added SoundCloud to our portfolio, and we're pretty happy with what they can do. The interface is beautiful, and millennials love it. So.
Well, the good news is we're going to be working with you, and if people locally want to do something, they could work with you as well. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. We're always happy to answer questions.
And we're you're a small business, so we're helping grow your small business. So this is how this all works. So if you enjoyed what you heard here, you want to be on our list and know more about what's going on here in 805. You can look at the number here on the screen, and you can send me mail, Mark at 805connect.com. And then I want to thank everybody who was on the call. They're really short, right? These are really crisp and quick. And Patrick, thank you so much. Look for Town. on iTunes or whatever podcast app you use. They're great. There's new shows every week. They record on Tuesday. We post on Thursday, I think, right? Yep.
That's correct.
So if you learned something today, tell somebody. This recording here will be up in about an hour and a half at Patrick Melroy Podcasting. And again, I want to thank everybody. I want to thank Citrix. These are talks with interesting people you want to know better. Patrick, thanks again. I really appreciate it, bud.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody.